So now it's all international students that are now barred from entering the US. And now it's all universities. As an Asian lady who teaches at Harvard, I have some opinions about this. We all know that the orange man has been trying to cripple science and higher education in general because he wants to have a fascist dictatorship where nobody knows what's going on or has critical thinking skills or can oppose him. But I think this is also a huge move against the Asian American community. A lot of recent Asian immigration to this country has been through the education system, higher education, where people come here for an undergraduate or a graduate degree and stay. My parents are some of these people.
Mixture of like shock, frustration, and then uncertainty, anxiety. I think the Trump administration knows very well what international students mean to the US. They contribute $40 billion a year in economic benefit, and then they kind of really feel the talent pool of the US, right? Especially in AI, in many other critical sectors.
I'm looking out for the country and for Harvard. I want Harvard to do well. I want Harvard to be great again, probably, because how could it be great? How could it be great when you have Harvard announced 2 weeks ago that they are going to teach remedial mathematics, remedial, meaning they're going to teach low-grade mathematics like 2 plus 2 is 4. How did these people get into Harvard if they can't do basic mathematics? How did they do it?
So now it's all international students that are now barred from entering the US. First, it was Harvard as retaliation for basically Harvard refusing to give over our information to the administration. And now it's all universities. As an Asian lady who teaches at Harvard, I have some opinions about this. We all know that the orange man has been trying to cripple science and higher education in general because he wants to have a fascist dictatorship where nobody knows what's going on or has critical thinking skills or can oppose him. But I think this is also a huge move against the Asian American community. He's been going after basically every minority, like women, Black Americans, Latino Americans, all using sort of like their own agencies. Like, there's ICE for certain groups, there's the police for other groups, and there's the DOJ for us. A lot of recent Asian immigration to this country has been through the education system, higher education, where people come here for an undergraduate or a graduate degree and stay. My parents are some of these people. They immigrated over in the 80s. And now I teach mostly graduate students because I teach PhD students and most of them are international. I can pretty confidently say that these are the planet's best and brightest. A lot of them are ESL and they're just writing entire papers in their second language and publishing them in scholarly journals and making a huge impact on science across the world. A ton of them are Asian. And this is gonna cripple our immigrant communities. And then he's also gonna start going after US citizens who look international at these higher education institutions. That means people like me. For a lot of Asian kids growing up in the motherland, the US is like their dream for higher education. It is known for having the best universities in the world, the most freedom of thought, or like so we used to consider us. It's no longer like that. Everybody's going to start going other places. They're going to go to like Oxford, Cambridge, the big universities in Europe, big universities in Asia. At least half of the scientists that I'm friends with are planning to go abroad for their next career move. So like US citizens who are in higher education are starting to like think about going elsewhere, hence brain drain. But yeah, back to my original point. He is retaliating against Asian people for this. Don't think for a second that he didn't know about that study a couple months ago, or that survey that showed that certain groups of Asian Americans are out-earning white Americans by a lot. Like, for example, I think Indian Americans are currently the highest income group in the entire country. Our domination in certain professions like medicine and our high enrollment at top universities, definitely his fan base is mad about that and he's coming after us for it. Even on very like neoliberal publications such as the New York Times, I'm seeing comments that say like, why does Harvard have such a huge international student body? These should be spots for Americans. We shouldn't have so many foreigners at our universities. They're 100% including American citizens who look like me as foreigners when they say these things. They don't realize that so much of the research that gets done at these universities is done by foreign students. And that at least for undergrad and for a lot of advanced degree programs, foreign students have to pay more tuition than American students do because that is like partly subsidizing the domestic students who are on financial aid. And to the Asian Americans who voted for this orange motherfucker, honestly, we started shooting ourselves in the foot a long time ago. Whoever those fucktards were who brought the case against Harvard for discriminating against Asian students in admissions and then completely got rid of affirmative action. Are people getting admitted to Harvard more now? Like, look at what just happened. Look at what just happened. We're gonna have fewer Asians at these universities just by virtue of A, discrimination against Asian Americans, and B, the Asians from abroad not being able to come here anymore. Are you done blaming Black and Latino excellence for your mediocrity, you Asian people who voted for this? Have we noticed that the real problem, which is legacy admissions, which mainly favors white people, have we noticed that that has not been targeted at all? Have you noticed that these students have like literally nothing going against them? Have you noticed that the president has not set any government agency to specifically target those legacy people, those moneyed white kids. I know of so many adults in my own community, Chinese American, who voted for this because they secretly think that they're better than other minorities in this country, including other Asian Americans. They think that people like the Bhutanese refugees who got deported to Central America have nothing to do with us, but they literally don't know that the people in charge can't tell the difference between us and other nationalities of Asian. Just because we immigrated here on a plane to come and study at a prestigious US university doesn't make us any better than refugees.
Good morning. Remember when Black people were like, oh, don't touch affirmative action. It doesn't just impact Black people. Remember, laws that impacted Black people trickled into impacting other communities of color. And affirmative action was one of them. Remember when we were talking about that last year? And then they gutted affirmative action on behalf of those who are from a community of color but chose to side with white supremacy because they felt like since they weren't Black, it wasn't going to impact them the same way. Remember that? Post-affirmative action, Asian American families are more stressed than ever about college admissions. There are communities of color who went to the Supreme Court who decided that what impacted Black people would not impact them in the same way. And now they're in the messing around and finding out. Now, I've made several videos about the early Reconstruction period and how the Reconstruction amendments came to be and how they impact communities of color today. Because of the fight for Black people, other communities of color now benefit from those same amendments, those same laws that our ancestors fought for. And now your anti-blackness is kicking your ass. I'm just saying, at some point, people in this country, especially communities of color, are going to learn that when you decide that you are not like Black people or you are better than those Black people, understand that white supremacy doesn't care, because there's going to always be a moment where they turn around and say, you are not white. You do not benefit. Just because you are not Black, we hate them over there. But just so you know, we hate you too. Understand, there is real anti-Blackness deeply rooted in this country. And when you decide as a person of color or a community of color that you want to disenfranchise Black people because the majority culture makes it okay to disenfranchise Black people, understand when they can no longer disenfranchise Black people, they come after you next. All I'm saying is, stop messing around with Black people trying to disenfranchise us, knowing good and well you are next on the chopping block.
If you are an international student dreaming of studying in the US and landing on that six-figure job after graduation, let's talk reality. Because according to Chinese Ministry of Education, over 80% of Chinese international students end up flying back home after graduation. Why? Because landing a job here in the US is like finding a needle in a haystack. Most companies don't want the hustle of sponsorship, which means they don't want to help you get a work visa. And without a work visa, there's no job. And if you're lucky enough to land on a job, you're usually on something called OPT, stands for Optional Practical Training, which allows you to work temporarily in the States, up to 3 years if you're in the STEM field. What happens after that? You're in this process called H-1B lottery, which literally means your future depends more on your luck than anything else. And every year, more people apply than there are spots. And what if you won the lottery? Well, congratulations, but now you're stuck in the green card wait list. And for Chinese nationals, that means waiting an additional 10 more years to get permanent residency. And if you lose your job anywhere along this process, well, you got 60 days to move out of this country. Yep, so gotta book your one-way ticket back home. So is it worth all the hustle? Well, for some, maybe. But for many, this American dream comes with a steep price tag.
Well, we've officially gotten to the point where we're revoking visas. Yeah. Marco Rubio stated last night that the US will begin to revoke visas from Chinese students. If you saw my other videos regarding Harvard and their international students and the Trump administration trying to squash their international student entry, I specifically stated that I did not think this had anything to do with Harvard and that this would extend to other students studying in America because they want to isolate us and because of racism. They are not just revoking visas from Chinese students, they are specifically targeting students who have any affiliation with the Chinese Communist Party and who are studying sensitive topics. Now, it's pretty unclear as of this moment what the exact guidelines and what the directive will take. I presume that those sensitive topics have to do with anything related to a social study. At this point, medicine seems to be pretty up in the air, seems to be a subjective topic. Chinese students make up the second largest population of international students in the United States. There are nearly 300,000 of them that come every single. We did too much with the red note and they're like, oh, y'all can't talk to these people anymore. I'm joking, but I don't know, am I? Now let's talk about the revenue loss that this would contribute to the United States economy. Anyone who has applied to a college, attended a college, university, knows that there are in-state tuitions, private schools, public schools, and then there is full tuition, right? Many international students pay that full price of tuition. On top of tuition, they actually generate regular economic impact because they go and buy things in our economy. According to the US Department of Commerce, in 2018, Chinese international students alone generated about $15 billion for the United States economy. That is not my main concern of what's going on, but I did just want to throw that out there for the people who seem to only think about the economy. I stated just a couple days ago about on tyranny rule number 16, and it is one of the most critical rules that I think we're starting to see play out. Learn from peers in other countries. We have our own propaganda system here that says capitalism good, communism bad. The Chinese Communist Party actually functions more as a democratic socialist state than it does as a communist state. They don't want you to know how their government works. They do not want you to know what it's like to live in China. They don't want you in any way, shape, or form affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. Learning about other governments, learning about other religions, other practices, other cultures, this is what makes us grow, and this is what expands our breadth of knowledge. The fundamental grounds of fascism is assimilation and lack of knowledge to the public. They want to control the narrative. This won't just fall on Chinese students. This will continue. The international student debate is going to continue. There will be more news in the future about this because they don't want us talking and they don't want us learning from other people.
I want to talk about what's going on with Harvard right now. It's like they make demands of Harvard, they being Trump and his people, and Harvard says no, and they just keep upping the ante, and it feels like they will not rest until Harvard doesn't exist anymore. And I know that Harvard in some ways is kind of like, it exemplifies elitism in America, and I get that. But even, I think for all of us, Harvard not existing anymore should be a concern, okay? And I have kind of three thoughts I've been thinking about when it comes to this back and forth battle. And I'll share them here. It could be more than three, so don't hold me to the three. But my first thought was thinking about the Office of Civil Rights and how it typically operates. So I used to work in higher education. I worked in like equal opportunity offices. And in those roles, you always work with the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. We call it OCR. And I was talking to a former colleague about this today, and she was like, you know what, you're right. They didn't do that. They did not follow the typical OCR process. So what usually happens, now also just a note here too, they fired half of OCR. They didn't fire all them people. So that's also important. So what typically happens is a student will file a complaint, a student, faculty, or staff member will file a complaint with OCR. They will say that my university failed to do something and they violated my civil rights. Example would be, I was graped on campus and my school failed to investigate it appropriately or do XYZ, and that's in violation of my civil rights. Under Obama, what they would do is they would take that one complaint, and they would use that to audit a university or college, look at all of their rape cases and other sexual misconduct cases. When Trump got in office, he stopped doing that. He didn't do that. But it was a really big deal because one case would have them auditing all the different things that you were doing to look for a pattern of behavior that was in violation of civil rights for students at your campus. And so as the university, you would get notice, which is part of due process. They would tell you, we're investigating you. You would have an opportunity to respond, to provide documents that supported that you did not violate, didn't have a violation here. They would come to your campus as well. They would have a campus visit. They would interview people, interview students, have focus group. It's a whole on investigation. That is the typical process for OCR when students' civil rights have been violated. That did not happen here. They got sent a letter saying you violated the civil rights of Jewish students, basically. And because of that, you got to do all these different things. There was no process, no due process, no actual process to determine if that happened. Now, it could have happened. I'm not saying that it did not. But in the U.S., particularly with our government entities, there typically is a process. The school has the ability to provide evidence or what have you. There's usually a process. They didn't get a process. And we know that because one of the first things he does when he gets in office is start sending out these letters to Columbia and Harvard making demands. And And these investigations take so much, they can take years. It takes so much time. And they got rid of half of OCR. So we know that there was no full-on investigation that involved talking to students, that involved, asking the universities for documentation about their process, what they did and did not do, all these different things. So out the gate, they are already deviating from the typical process. And this is a violation of due process, but they continue to move on as if it doesn't matter. As we know, due process is not a thing in the US anymore, according to them. The other thing now, they are going after international students. And I think a lot of people do not realize this. Over the last few decades, higher education has been basically defunded. Your state governments do not fund higher education. This started under Reagan in California. All things lead back to Reagan, if you've noticed. And so that became a thing across the country. Universities are trying to find other ways to make money. So they will subsidize the university through certain programs. For example, law schools pay a lot more into the overall pot than like an undergraduate program will. The other group that subsidizes universities are international students. So people are thinking, oh, they're coming taking spots. No. They're keeping universities afloat because they pay higher fees. They often pay in cash because they don't get financial aid or what have you. They are keeping universities afloat. So the attacks on international students isn't just this symbolism about America first. No. That is going to obliterate universities' budgets. Like not even just like your Ivies, even junior colleges, even community colleges are kept afloat by international students that can't qualify for student aid, that pay higher fees because they're non-citizens. It's going to be a huge ripple effect, and people are not realizing that. And it's going to have impacts beyond just Harvard. The other thing, my third thought about this, I did keep it to 3, y'all. My third thought is this. These folks are all about Make America Great Again. And they haven't spent time in analyzing what makes America great, not just to ourselves. What makes us the envy of the world? What makes us an American superpower? What do we export out in terms of culture? What do people want from us? And one of those things is education. I think it's some European princess who I think is the crown princess, who's a sophomore at Harvard. Her family was like, she might not be able to go back because of this ban on international students. We are educating the royalty of Europe. That is influence that I don't think the Make America Great Again people fully understand. And when you start closing those doors and you move into isolationism, you become North Korea. You become great on unto yourself. Like if the other people can experience what we have, you're not great. And so Harvard is older than this country. If an institution like Harvard has to cave, either caving to his demands or having to close down certain elements of the university because because he's attacking them left and right, that is not a win for any of us, y'all. It definitely impacts how we're viewed globally, but also too how we're able to educate the next leaders of the world. People that we can call them elitists, whatever, but people that we love and respect are Harvard grads, from the Obamas, people like that. And so I'm just like, this is not good, y'all. This is not good at all. And I do think Harvard's on the right side of history here, but this has to make its way up to the Supreme Court. And they want these institutions to fall in line. I keep telling y'all, they hate the fact that these institutions, they feel like they are liberal training grounds because they know the stats. The more education you get, the more likely you are to be liberal. And they want to bust that up. But in busting that up, they're going to bust up the entire system of higher education. It's very, very problematic, y'all.